Welcome to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. And now, your host, Tim Johnson.
The Capital Area Groundwater Conservation Commission is responsible for permitting and monitoring groundwater consumption in the greater Baton Rouge area. Industry has come under increased criticism for its utilization of groundwater and is generally being blamed for the saltwater intrusion that is taking place. We'll get the science and the facts when Tony Duplechin, Director of the Capital Area Groundwater Conservation District, joins us when we return on the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.
The Louisiana Business and Industry Show will be back right after this.
Hi, I'm Joe Martin, President of ITI Technical College. Do you want a better life?
Get your associate's degree in occupational studies in information technology from ITI. In 2 years, you'll be on your way to a better life. You will get hands-on specialized training in computers, hardware and software, networking, and more. ITI offers flexible class schedules, and financial aid is available to those who qualify.
So don't wait. Call ITI now or go online. It's that simple.
ITI for a better life.
Hi, I'm Eric Coleman from Cox Communication, inviting you to watch our local religious channel, FaithNet 96. Since 1978, local churches have used television to spread the word and grow their ministry. You'll hear great sermons that be moved by choirs and soloists from right here in our community. Simply turn your cable box to channel 96 or reprogram your TV tuner if you have basic service. FaithNet 96, an exclusive channel of Cox Communication, proudly bringing local religious services to you.
I'm Leighton Ricks, Livingston Parish, and Livingston Parish is on the move. One of the primary things that we ran on was developing business and jobs in Livingston Parish for our people so that we can bring obviously additional revenue to be able to support our infrastructure needs. We're going to continue to progress here in Livingston Parish. When everybody comes together, these kind of things happen. I mean, what can you say? It's absolutely awesome. It's the perfect place to be. It's where you want to be today, I can guarantee you that.
Hi, I'm Lee Burkeen with Louisiana Football TV Magazine. Be sure to watch our show every week where we have big-time recruits, college coaches, NFL players, current and former players, and call-ins with your questions. Be sure to catch us every Tuesday night at 6:30 live and 10:30 replayed on Cox 4 in Baton Rouge.
Insurance commercials have become unusually funny. We think that's strange because we take auto coverage pretty seriously at Louisiana Farm Bureau Insurance. Of course, when you cover as many vehicles in Louisiana as we do, it doesn't leave a lot of time for silly gimmicks. We're more concerned about what happens to you on the road than any chickens that happen to cross it just to make you chuckle. Louisiana Farm Bureau Insurance. Real service, real people.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show with Tim Johnson.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. I'm very pleased to be joined by my friend Tony Duplechin, who is the Director of the Capital Area Groundwater Conservation District. Tony, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Tim.
A lot of important issues to talk about relative to the utilization of groundwater in industry and a lot of things that are going on out there, a lot of things we've heard in the media. Give our viewers a 30-second primer on groundwater, surface water, sands, aquifers, the terms we're going to be using today.
Okay. Well, let's start off with surface water. And surface water is like rivers, lakes, streams, the ocean, seas. Everybody knows what that is. Groundwater gets a little more complicated. People realize that it's water underground. But where is it located underground? A lot of people think it's the same thing, rivers or seas underground. And for the most part, that's not the case. It's located in different saturated sands under the ground. If you imagine, if you take a slice through the ground, it might look like a layer cake. Okay, we have sands, clays, sands, clays. Well, the water is located in those sands, and it gets there through percolation from above by rainfall or from other sands in the aquifer.
But it keeps the water housed there, and that's where we draw water out from if we put a well in or something like that, and that's why we call it our groundwater. Now, One of the big issues that's been in the news, a lot of media attention about this issue recently, is this saltwater migration that we're seeing in the greater Baton Rouge area. Give us an idea of what's happening there.
Okay. Saltwater in groundwater is naturally occurring.
And that's an important issue, right? Important point to make, that this saltwater intrusion is naturally occurring.
That's correct.
Right.
A lot of scientists now think that it is percolating off of the many salt domes throughout throughout Louisiana in general. They're having saltwater intrusion issues in North Louisiana as well. And what's happening in the Baton Rouge area is, as water is pumped out, the salt water tends to move uphill, up dip, to replace the fresh water, and it's causing it to get pretty close to some of the different wells around the city, either used for public supply or for industrial purposes.
But it's moving toward those wells in sort of an equal way, toward industry and toward sort of the Baton Rouge Water Company or the drinking water supply wells.
Right. It's moving towards wherever the big draw is. Anytime there's a draw out of the ground, out of the groundwater out, it will reduce the pressure in the aquifer, and that will cause the salt water to move towards that area where it's being drawn from.
We're going to talk about a lot of the issues that we hear relative to industry and what's going on with groundwater, but this whole idea that this is naturally occurring is not something that the media typically picks up on, right? Generally, when we see information about saltwater intrusion, it's generally tied to industry utilization, but as you've stated clearly, science tells us that it is naturally occurring and most likely coming from the very plentiful number of salt domes that exist around South Louisiana.
That's correct. That's correct. Now, you may have some instances where you have some oil and gas operations that were not completed properly, and you will have some saltwater leak out of those wells into the aquifer. But for the most part, I'd say 99% of the saltwater in Louisiana that's causing problems, it's naturally occurring either from the salt domes like up here, or if you get into the coastal areas, sometimes it's seawater coming in. But even down in coastal Louisiana around Cameron, they use fresh groundwater for their drinking water supply.
And some of that could be the saltwater intrusion that we might see there could be from the salt domes as well, right? So I want to make sure I get this right, but the Capital Area Groundwater Conservation Commission has just issued a 10-year management plan. And I want to read this to make sure I get it right, which outlines the process that will be used by the Commission to evaluate sound and objective science in formulating specific management actions for each aquifer or sand. So that brings up a number of questions. Tell us first about the extensive modeling that's taking place and what the initial modeling might be telling us.
Okay. For the last 4 years, the Capital Area Groundwater Conservation District and Commission have been working through contracts with the U.S. Geological Survey, first to model the 2,000-foot sand.
And this is extensive computer modeling of that 2,000-foot sand, right?
Yes. And right now they're working on the 1,500-foot sand. This contract is funded in part by Capital Area Groundwater Conservation District, the USGS themselves, East Baton Rouge Department of Public Works, and the Louisiana Department of Transportation and Development.
So a number of parties that are involved. Right, good.
As time goes on, like you said, we've had 10 different sands in East Baton Rouge Parish, and we want to model each one of those different sands.
And it can really tell us what this saltwater intrusion looks like and the level at which it is moving toward these wells, right?
Right, correct. The next one they'll do says 1,200-foot sand, which is one of the sands that Capital Area felt maybe industry should look at going to and leaving the 1,500-foot sand just for public supply.
We're gonna need to take a break, but I want to come back and talk about this in some more detail because industry is getting a lot of the blame for what's going on here, sort of getting a bad rap. A lot of folks saying, we're going to use up our groundwater or we're going to contaminate our groundwater. So I want to come back and address those allegations pretty specifically. We're visiting with Tony Duplechin. He is the director of the Capital Area Groundwater Conservation District, and you're watching the Louisiana Business and Industry Show on Cox 4.
The Louisiana Business and Industry Show will be back right after this.
I go to work every day, and I love doing what I'm doing, and I love being a part of Livingston Parish, and to be elected sheriff, to be able to lead Livingston Parish Sheriff's Office is just such an honor for me. And so I'm very excited about not only where we're at today, but where we're going to be at in the future. The parish is so special to us. The citizens, they work with the Sheriff's Office, they trust the Sheriff's Office. Our community stands behind us 100%, and they get involved. They don't want crime in Livingston Parish.
At Peak Performance Physical Therapy, we treat the athlete in everyone, from the Grand Slam hitter to grandparents. If your doctor prescribes physical therapy, ask for Peak Performance by name, getting you back in the game of life.
Hello, I'm Eric Edwards with the Livingston Parish Convention and Visitors Bureau. Find out now what's going on in Livingston Parish. We have over 400 nautical miles of waterways. Tee it up at our great world-renowned golf courses. Shop at our antique districts, or come to Bass Pro, our #1 retailer. There's a lot to do in Livingston Parish that you never imagined. It's all happening right here in Livingston Parish. For more information, go online at visitlivingstonparish.com.
Each week, catch the award-winning Paradise Louisiana as Gary Risponi, Joe Macaluso, and Don Dubuque bring you Louisiana's most comprehensive TV fishing and hunting show. A full hour of the best fish and game action Louisiana has to offer, plus in-depth coverage of current regulation changes, the latest gear, events calendar, fishing reports, and issues that affect you, the Louisiana outdoorsman. Paradise Louisiana.
Watch Paradise Louisiana Wednesdays at 7:30 only on Cox 4.
At Peak Performance Physical Therapy, we treat the athlete in everyone, from the three-point shooter to the three-piece suit. If your doctor prescribes physical therapy, ask for Peak Performance by name, getting you back in the game of life.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show with Tim Johnson.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. We're visiting with Tony Duplechin. He is the director of the Capital Area Groundwater Conservation District, which is part of the Capital Area Groundwater Conservation Commission. And Tony, before the break, we started talking about the different sands, the different aquifers at different depths, right? The discussion of the 1,200-foot sands and what's called the 1,500-foot sands. And I think that most of the wells we have today are existing in the 1,500-foot sand. Is that accurate?
Well, most of the public supply wells, a good number of them are in the 1,500-foot sand, especially in the area towards downtown Baton Rouge. As you get up towards Baker and out in the rural parts of the parish, you find wells in the deeper 2,400 and 2,800 sands.
Well, it's interesting enough, though, that there's this conversation around running out of water in the 1,500-foot sand or some other type issue like that. And the truth of the matter is that these aquifers are so large and there are so many square miles of sand that exist that we're only tapped into a very small portion of that at this time. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's a correct statement. The Southern Hills Aquifer System, which Baton Rouge area is part of, extends through not only the 5 parishes that are in Capital Area, East and West Baton Rouge, East and West Feliciana, and Point Capee, but also St. Helena, Livingston, Tangipahoa, Washington, and St. Tammany parishes.
We ask this question all the time, and you maybe hear some of it in the tone that the media will sometimes use around this issue, but are we going to run out of water?
I don't think we're going to run out of water anytime soon. Now, depending upon where you put your well, you may have problems. Baton Rouge Water Company has their wells not too far from the Baton Rouge Fault, which is where the salt water is bleeding across. Well, they're pretty much the only draw on that 1,500-foot sand in that area, so naturally the saltwater plume is going to go towards their wells.
The plume heads where the water is being drawn, obviously, and that's a naturally occurring issue, right? Let's talk about some of this criticism, because very vocal critics say that industry is responsible for most of these groundwater issues. You and I have talked about the fact that criticism is not actually accurate. Industry is doing a lot of work to try to mitigate, reduce their own consumption, their own utilization. Let's talk about some of those issues, some of the criticism that you've heard, and maybe the science that says not all of that criticism is accurate.
Okay. There's been a lot of talk. People said all we need to do is get rid of industry and it'll solve our groundwater problems and our saltwater intrusion problems. Well, that's not entirely the case. If you look at the saltwater intrusion in the 2,000-foot aquifer, which is the main one that industry uses, yes, they're causing a problem, but they're causing the problem to themselves. They're pretty much the only ones who draw out of that 2,000-foot sand. Baton Rouge Water Company has some wells into 2,000-foot sand, and if industry were to totally cut off of using the 2,000-foot sand, then by about 2050, the salt water would have migrated towards Baton Rouge Water Company's production wells in the 2,000-foot sand.
That's an interesting point. So where both industry and the Baton Rouge Water Company, which by the way is a private entity, where both of them are drawing from the same 2,000-foot sand, if industry shut off its consumption, its pumping tomorrow, it would actually make the problem of saltwater migration toward drinking water wells worse, wouldn't it?
That's correct. Right. The industrial pumping is tending to deflect the salt water away from the public supply wells that are in the 2,000-foot sand.
So let's go back to the 10-year plan that we've talked about earlier. What are some of the additional things that you're looking for there? You talked about some of the initial modeling and what it's showing you. What are some of the mitigation steps that are being taken just in general? I know Baton Rouge Water Company is doing some things. I know that industry is doing some things, but let's talk first about the Baton Rouge Water Company. What are some of the things that they're looking at in terms of mitigating any damage from this saltwater intrusion?
Okay, in addition to the scavenger well that we already talked about, they have also put in another production well north of the area of where the saltwater tongue is leading up to, up Scenic Highway towards Montesina Bayou.
And so there's
that's
additional.
Another place for them to get fresh water. It'll be many, many, many years before salt water could get there. I think even Baton Rouge Water Company admits that eventually they'll have to stop pumping from those Lula Street wells because, like I said, they're the only ones pumping out of the 1,500-foot sand there, and the water is going to reach their wells eventually. Now, the scavenger well will give them maybe 50 years or so before they have to do that. But the wells that are there are already 50 years old. So they're going to be having to replace their wells.
And so is it a case then that once one of these major pumping wells from the Baton Rouge Water Company begins to see the intrusion of the salt water closer and closer, that what they do is then they shut down that well and they move that well, or they drill another well to a different place in that sand, in that aquifer, so that they begin to bring clean water out of that from that perspective?
They'll have to move their whole pumping station aerially away from there and maybe into a different sand.
How many total wells does a company like Baton Rouge Water
Baton Rouge
have?
Water Company has, I'm pretty sure, between 70 and 80 wells, and they're spread throughout the parish. East Baton Rouge Parish is about 471 square miles, so it's a pretty big area. Baton Rouge Water Company not only supplies Baton Rouge Water Company, they also supply Parish Water Company, which has wells in the northern part of the parish and supplies some of the rural areas up there. And then they supply Ascension Water Company, which is water that goes down to Ascension Parish.
So it's a big operation. We'll take another break. I want to come back and talk specifically about some of the things that industry is doing to reduce its own consumption. We're visiting with Tony Duplechin. He is the director of the Capital Area Groundwater Conservation District, and you're watching the Louisiana Business and Industry Show on Cox 4.
The Louisiana Business and Industry Show will be back right after this.
At Peak Performance Physical Therapy, we treat the athlete in everyone, from the Grand Slam hitter to grandparents. If your doctor prescribes physical therapy, ask for Peak Performance by name, getting you back in the game of life.
Hi, I'm Duplechin with Louisiana Football TV Magazine. Be sure to watch our show every week where we have big-time recruits, college coaches, NFL players, current and former players, and call-ins with your questions. Be sure to catch us every Tuesday night at 6:30 live and 10:30 replayed on Cox 4 in Baton Rouge.
Hello, I'm Eric Edwards with the Livingston Parish Convention and Visitors Bureau. Find out now what's going on in Livingston Parish. We have over 400 nautical miles of waterways. Tee it up at our great world-renowned golf courses. Shop at our antique districts, or come to Bass Pro, our #1 retailer. There's a lot to do in Livingston Parish that you never imagined. It's all happening right here in Livingston Parish. For more information, go online at visitlivingstonparish.com.
At Peak Performance Physical Therapy, we treat the athlete in everyone, from the soccer star to the soccer mom. If your doctor prescribes physical therapy, ask for Peak Performance by name, getting you back in the game of life.
Insurance commercials have become unusually funny. We think that's strange because we take auto coverage pretty seriously at Louisiana Farm Bureau Insurance. Of course, when you cover as many vehicles in Louisiana as we do, it doesn't leave a lot of time for silly gimmicks. We're more concerned about what happens to you on the road than any chickens that happen to cross it just to make you chuckle. Louisiana Farm Bureau Insurance. Real service, real people.
At Peak Performance Physical Therapy, we treat the athlete in everyone, from long drivers to unlucky drivers. If your doctor prescribes physical therapy, ask for Peak Performance by name, getting you back in the game of life.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show with Tim Johnson.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. Thanks for giving us part of your day. We're visiting with Tony Duplechin. He is the director of the Capital Area Groundwater Conservation District. And Tony, we talked about a lot of the criticism that industry has faced. We talked about a lot of the very vocal critics that are out there. I know you've spent a lot of time at the legislature over the course of the last couple of weeks, and I know within the last few days, some of the legislation that was pending there dealing with this issue, the legislature made the decision to defer some of it, kill some of it. Talk a little bit about some of the legislation that was filed. And then I want us to spend the second half of the segment really talking about some of the effort that industry has made to assist in this situation.
Okay, well, there have been several bills dealing with pumpage limits on how much either facilities could use or just in general. And facilities was defined as not including agriculture and households.
So they were basically coming after petrochemical plants,
industry.
Refineries, that sort of thing, right?
And they wanted to declare the Southern Hills Aquifer System, which, like I said, is some 9 or 10 parishes, as an area of groundwater concern and a critical area of groundwater concern, in which case the Commissioner of Conservation could impose limits on everybody in those parishes. Well, that's not the way that system was set up. I used to work for Department of Natural Resources and was helpful in writing that law, and it can only be done through an application to the Office of Conservation with sound scientific data to back it up and do it. But that was not presented, and that bill did not get out of committee.
Well, one of the things I think that remains pending is this whole idea of possibly creating a unified water code. Give us 30 seconds on what that might be.
Okay, it's past time that Louisiana had a solid code for dealing both with surface water and groundwater. As I was just saying, I used to work for the Department of Natural Resources, and I remember people from the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex used to always come to Louisiana, lawyers, and say, we've got a deal for you. We're going to give you so many billions of dollars for the water out of Toledo Bend Reservoir. And if you went over the course of the 50, 60 years of the contract, it came out to maybe 3 or 4 cents a gallon, which, that's pretty much giving your water away.
Yeah, that's right.
So, and legislature has worked on that in the past. There are also, numerous other lakes, the water being used for fracking operations. That's something that the legislature has been looking at in the last few years.
We'll keep our eye on that to see what happens with the potential for a unified Louisiana water code. But let's wrap this up talking about industry, because while industry gets a bad rap relative to this whole issue, they've really worked hard to support the efforts of the Groundwater Conservation Commission. They've taken a lot of voluntary steps to reduce their own consumption. Talk about your working relationship with East Baton Rouge Parish industry and some of the things you've seen them do to try to assist in dealing with this saltwater intrusion effort.
Okay, industry has 3 reps on our commission, which is 15 people, and they've worked very closely with us to come up with reductions in pumpage, and they've been more than agreeable to them. Exxon in particular is hoping to have reduced their pumpage by 25%
significantly
by the end of this year, significant amount. They are also working with us on looking into locations for possibly putting a scavenger well in the 2,000-foot sand to help intercept that salt water before it should get up to the industrial district.
Now, another thing that I think I've seen somewhere or we've talked about is that this whole idea that Exxon doesn't get all of its water from the aquifer. I mean, about 50% of its consumption comes from river.
They get about 50% of their water from the river. And in fact, anywhere you find an industry that uses groundwater and they're located adjacent to a significant surface water source, they also use surface water. Up in North Louisiana, West Monroe, Graphic Packaging. There's a big problem with the Sparta aquifer up there. They're using 10 million gallons of water a day from the aquifer. They're also using 12 million out of Ouachita River. So industries realize it's not going to last forever, and they have to do their part to help sustain it.
You know, it's funny, I've worked with industry a long time and seen a lot of environmental presentations, and oftentimes they talk about the fact that if they pump water from the river, put it through their process, and then put it through their environmental systems, it's generally cleaner when they put it back in the river than it was when they took it out of the river. 30 seconds, Tony. What's on the horizon for the Capital Area Groundwater Conservation Commission? What are you guys going to be working on?
We're going to continue work on this 10-year plan that was passed week before last, and hopefully USGS will be on time with their current modeling effort for the sand that they're working on now, and we'll look and see what the effects are of putting in scavenger wells and reductions, and the combination of both of them. It's going to take everybody working together to solve this problem, and we may not really solve it, but we will come out on the good side of it.
We're going to use real science. Tony Duplechin, thanks for joining us today, buddy.
Tim.
That's a wrap, guys. Join us again next week at this very same time for another edition of the Louisiana Business and Industry Show on Cox 4.